Social Security is designed basically to pay out more to lower income earners, right? And so that's where the whole repeal, that's where the Fairness Act started anyways, was that teachers are already getting this pension. Is it fair that they also get kind of prorated into a higher Social Security benefit because of their time not in the classroom? And personally, I say thank goodness that they repealed it, because I don't think that teachers should be uh, hit or reduced because of their obligation to helping serve the public. Like the teaching is hard enough anyways. We don't need to have a reduced benefit out there.
Welcome to the Teacher Money Show, the podcast dedicated to helping teachers navigate your unique financial challenges and unlock your financial superpowers. I'm your host, Sean Morgan, a full-time teacher. That's right, I teach every day just like you, and personal financial coach and speaker. And I'm here to help every teacher, whether you're a seasoned teacher looking for fresh insights or a new educator navigating your first paycheck, to have a richer wallet, classroom, and life. The contents of this podcast are informational in nature and are not legal or tax advice, and neither I nor my guests are engaged in the provision of legal, tax, or any other advice. You should not act upon this information without first seeking appropriate advice from an accountant, financial planner, lawyer, or other professional. I'm super excited to have David Gourley on the show today. David is the founder and lead financial planner at K-12 Planning, an independent financial planning firm specializing in finance for teachers, which is why what he does is near and dear to my heart. He has served for 8 years as a high school mathematics teacher before transitioning into financial services. So he's got the teaching experience. He's got the finance knowledge. It's going to be a fantastic conversation today. David, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you very much. Happy to be here.
So I want to first dive in a little bit more into your education journey, just because I feel like that's how we connect. We've all been there, right? So what was your journey in education? How did you move in education to being interested in finance?
Yeah, so I'll go back to, I was actually kind of interested in finance first. So I graduated college in 2008 with a finance degree. And for anybody who knows anything about 2008, it was not exactly the best time to graduate with a finance degree. And so I was applying to a variety of different companies, and being the low man on the totem pole, it was tough. And I finally got a job in the industry, and I was working in a cubicle, I should say, 8 hours, maybe 8 or 9 hours a day, every single day. It was terrible. It was a call center for a financial, kind of a financial adjacent firm. And it was not fun. And I come from a long line of educators. My parents were both teachers. My sister was a teacher. My aunts and uncles teachers. My grandparents were teachers. So I knew a lot about the education space, but I had seen it enough, and I was like, there's no way I'm going to do this. And then after 2008 and kind of that whole 2008, 2009 being in that industry, I was like, okay, maybe this is something I do want to explore. And I had a short stint where I was doing a long-term sub gig and doing some different jobs inside of a school. And my principal basically said to me, like, hey, if you go get a math teaching certificate, we will hire you. And I was like, well, that's pretty good. I like the sounds of that. So in 2010, I ended up moving to a different spot, went back to school, and finished 2.5 years of basically getting my teaching credentials and my minor in math, and started working in 2012 full-time in a high school here in Kansas City, Missouri.
Yeah, that's awesome. A lot of people just fall right into teaching, and it's a good job to fall into sometimes. It's just like, wow, this is something that's meaningful, and you get to use those finance math skills that you had, but then you saw this passion for finance, and we'll talk more about what you do as a K-12 planning here later. But today I wanted to just pick your brain and have a conversation specifically about one thing that could be influencing the way that we plan our finances as teachers, and that is the repeal of the WEP and GPO. I think it's called like the Fair Social Security Act or something like that just got passed. So for those who don't know what this is, I'm just going to define these terms for us real quick, and then we're going to have a conversation about it. The WEP is Windfall Elimination Provision. And this reduces Social Security benefits for people who have worked in both Social Security covered jobs and jobs not covered by Social Security, such as a teacher pension, right? If you have a pension that doesn't have any Social Security payments going on, like you're just contributing to the pension, but you've also worked for Social Security, that's where WEP comes into play. And then we have the GPO, which is government pension offset, which reduces Social Security spousal or survivor benefits for people who receive a non-covered pension. So if you have the pension and then you have the survival benefit of Social Security, it would adjust that. Those were these two rules in place for a long time, and they've recently been repealed. Do you have anything you want to add to those basic definitions that might be important for us to know?
I think you did a good job with the basic definitions. I think that the words, the official language is kind of hard to understand sometimes, right? So basically for the teachers in, Missouri is one of the big ones, Texas, California, there's about 12 different states out there that this directly impacts, where the teachers are not paying into Social Security, right? They're just paying into the pension, no Social Security part. And that's where they get impacted or did get impacted prior to this, is if they were only getting that government pension, not paying into that Social Security side, and then also had another job before. Some people work, 15 years or something like that, and then go into education, for example. Or maybe they did jobs back in high school and college and then went into education. And then whenever they get out of education, they're planning on going and working in another job for a little while. Those people, when they reach Social Security age, we're going to have a reduced amount of Social Security. And the maximum that they were going to have reduced back in 2024 was $587. That was the max that they could reduce. So they would still maybe get something, or maybe it would be completely wiped out. It kind of went up on a gradual scale, though. So they'd probably get something. It was just going to be less than what they should have gotten. The other side of that, the government pension offset, that's the big one. Because we can structure pensions in a way where if one spouse dies, you can do the spouse plus the other person's life. A lot of states I see do the 50%, 75%, and 100% of the pension, and their pension amount gets reduced for that. But if they were to die first, it would just move over to their spouse and they would get that money. But the issue with that is that if the other spouse passed first, they wouldn't be able to get those Social Security spousal benefits. Most of the time, if you're receiving any sort of a decent teacher pension, it would get reduced down to zero. And that was the big one, because trying to plan long term of, hey, we need the Social Security, the Social Security spouse who's receiving that, we need you to live longer, right? And it's not possible to pick that exactly, but like that's kind of the idea, is like, hey, we need you to go longer on this, because if it works in reverse and the Social Security spouse passes first, the other person is not going to receive any benefits, and that's really going to hurt people in their 80s and 90s when they're trying to plan for long-term care and nursing homes and care that they may need, and say, hey, you're going to have to do this on half of your budget that you thought you may have originally.
Yeah, so the hard part about this was not necessarily the reducing of it, but the fact that you couldn't plan on whether or not the reducing would happen, because you basically have a 50-50 chance of who's going to survive, and that makes a big difference in your planning if one survives versus the other.
100%, yeah. So those are the big pieces of it for sure.
So just trying to understand this, now that this has been removed, does that basically just make planning easier in general? Is that how that's affecting us, or is it really benefiting us with like higher payouts in retirement?
Both. It makes the planning side a little bit easier for sure. And then exactly where you can more or less say, we're going to be getting this spousal benefit at some point in time if we need it, or if the person does pass first. And then also looking at how many credits do you have towards Social Security. So you have to have 40 credits to receive Social Security. And that means every credit is a quarter of a year. And so one credit equals 1/4 of a year. So if you work during that quarter of a year, you get 1 credit. And there's certain income limits that you have to try to hit during that too, to qualify for Social Security. But for example, if somebody was working in college and beyond for a non-teaching job and then moved into a teaching job where they're only paying a pension, they may have 30 credits towards Social Security right now. I'll look at that and say, well, it might benefit you. Well, it would benefit you. It kind of depends on what you want to do, but it might really benefit your long-term plans to go pick up those other 10 quarters after you retire and qualify for Social Security benefits. So that way you can receive those whenever the time and date comes down, between 62 and 70.
Yeah, I mean, before this repeal, going out and getting that might have been a little beneficial, but it wasn't going to have that full benefit for the Social Security. I know a guy right now, he's Rashad, actually, he was on this podcast, and we were talking about it after we stopped the recording. He's posting about it on Facebook all the time, how he's working just like, just a job at like a grocery store, I believe it was, just to get those last few credits that he needs to qualify for Social Security. With this repeal, it's now in his best interest to suddenly qualify for Social Security, so that way he can start getting that additional benefit when he retires. Yeah. So it's a very powerful thing to be like, okay, where am I credit wise? So that way, if you already met that, great. But if you haven't and you're partway there, it might be a time to consider that. Do you know if you, like, say you work as like a waiter or something like that over the summer? I'm assuming that would usually pay into Social Security, and that would be building up credits and things like that. Does that sound correct to you?
Exactly. Now with the waiter, the question would be, are you reporting all of your tips? From a tax standpoint, hopefully, but from a lot of waiters, that's one of the kind of the things is that they will only report credit card tips. So they may not qualify under the income amounts. But if they're reporting everything, if they're doing it as they technically should, then yes, it would qualify for Social Security benefits. Basically, anything that's not paying it, very few jobs besides government jobs would not qualify as one of those credits.
Right, but just wanted to try and understand this. So, like, if we're talking about jobs, we're talking about actual W-2 type employment, not driving for Uber necessarily, or
1099 income works just fine as well. 1099 income, because you have to pay your portion and you have to pay both the employer portion and the employee portion of Social Security and Medicare. So you actually end up getting taxed higher, which is it is what it is, but those you still qualify for Social Security for that time. Yeah. So you could do Uber driving would count.
Uber driving would count. Awesome. You have to meet a certain threshold though before you start. So you have to do a lot of Uber driving before it really.
Exactly. There's certain income limits that you have to hit in order to get your credit.
Okay. Awesome. See that. Thank you for clarifying that. I thought that like some gig economy type things don't always get reported properly, I guess is really the problem. So making sure that you're reporting it correctly is probably the important part there if you want to hit that requirement.
Exactly, because the other issue is that if you're driving, for example, you can deduct so much from gas and car and all those things. There's ways to take deductions on 1099 income and side hustle income, whatever you want to call it. You can deduct a ton of expenses. When you deduct those expenses, they're no longer qualifying as income, and so they're not going to qualify for those Social Security credits quite as easily.
That's another important thing. So like I talk a lot about your side hustles and how you can use that to reduce your income if you do the expenses correctly. But it's a balancing act, because if you're trying to hit that minimum requirement in your side hustle and that side business that you have, you need to make sure you're hitting that minimum spend amount, or not spend amount, minimum pay amount to be able to get those credits if you're trying to maximize your pension and your Social Security.
Yeah.
So, but this would only apply in those states that are only paying into pensions, right? So there are plenty of states where the teachers are paying into a pension and Social Security, right?
Exactly. So the repeal it happened early January. I think it was January 5th. But the repeal basically only really affects the people that are getting the government pension where it's not paying them Social Security. So all of those other states that are, it doesn't affect them quite as much. And really, most of the people that it affects are those that are already retired. and already taking Social Security and getting that. The people that are still working today may not even know about it, right? And then they may not even be thinking about retirement yet, and they may not even be thinking about, oh, I did some jobs before becoming a teacher, and when they hit Social Security age, they between 62 and 70, they can take their Social Security, and they may not have ever even known that there was a reduction at one point in the past. They're just going to say, oh, I qualify for this amount. Great. That's awesome. And I get my teacher pension. Great. And just go on living life, and didn't even know that there was this, that this big thing that happened in 2025 that really helped them get some more money along the way.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you weren't using this as part of your planning, though, I guess you don't have to now, but if you were stressing about this, realizing that this has changed, I think is really powerful, because you can plan, and really you can plan to have more money than you were planning on before, which I think is really cool.
One of the cool things for the people that did that it was directly affecting, for the Windfall Elimination Provision side especially, I know this one to be for 100% fact, is that in about February of 2025, they went back and so the repeal happened, like I said, early January, but it actually backdated it to the beginning of 2024. And by doing that, what happened is that these people got a very substantial check direct deposited into their account from Social Security in February for all of their missed benefits, or all of that, the reduced benefit all at once in February of 2025. So people were getting $8,000, $9,000, $10,000 hitting their account on one day. And I've got several clients that are two teacher families that were affected by the Windfall Elimination Provision, and they got $20,000 bump in February to make up for all of 2024 that they didn't get that amount that they should have gotten.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah. So kind of a fun little way to say, hey, here's a bonus. Here you go.
Thank you for being a teacher. Here's a bonus.
Yeah. Most teachers don't get a yearly bonus, but if you were retired, maybe you did this year.
Hey, so since we were talking about it, I decided to look this up real quick. And I'm surprised how small this is actually. To earn one Social Security credit, you need to have $1,810 in covered earnings. So that's in a 3-month period. So you need to make a total of $7,240 in the year, and in $1,800 chunks basically, to qualify. So like your side, waiting tables will probably make that much as long as you're reporting it properly, right? I mean, you'll probably make that much even if you aren't reporting it properly.
Probably so.
So, it's not a huge hurdle to overcome, but you just don't want to try and reduce it below that amount, so that way you do still get that credit.
Yeah, I didn't know the exact number, but yeah, I knew it was relatively low. And actually, when you say it, it sounds way lower than it. Yeah, it sounds low.
Yeah, I mean, like, you can't survive on that much on a month almost these days, unless you're like living in the absolute lowest of poverty, let alone over 3. So it is quite a low bar, but I guess they're just making sure that you're actually doing substantial work of some kind before you give you credit. So if you live in one of these states where you're paying Social Security, I want to go back to this idea here. You're paying it already. You're going to get payment for Social Security and pension already. This repeal did not change how that would work if you were already paying into both. Is that
exactly
right?
It didn't affect it at all. The thing about those states is that, and this is just a kind of separate topic, but those people will be eligible to receive their pension as soon as they retire from education. In many states, you can retire from education by 55, by 60, and then you have to start determining when is the best time to take Social Security, right? Because you can technically start it right at 62, but is that the best time to take it? Well, kind of the funny part about Social Security is that it's all dependent on how long you're going to live, right? And so if you are like, there's no way I'm going to live past 80, well, maybe it's good to take it earlier. Or if you plan on living a long, healthy life, it's good to wait on that as long as possible, right? And so I think that's a whole nother conversation, but it's tough to try to plan around when do you start taking Social Security if that's part of your whole package. So you've got your pension, and then that's why I know you stress on it and I stress on it, but you have to have some sort of other retirement savings as well to kind of bridge that time in there between when you retire from teaching and when you actually want to start taking your Social Security benefits. Or maybe you pick up another job or something small to kind of supplement your income along the way as well before you really dive into full retirement and take your benefits.
Yeah, I want to throw an idea past you that I've been thinking about that's completely not related to what we're talking about, but kind of what you're talking about there. I'm wondering, and maybe that I just need to do the math on this, if taking Social Security as early as possible, so that way you are not pulling money out of a retirement account that you have saved so it can continue to grow, if that is a net benefit over waiting to take out Social Security. Gut reaction, what's your thought on that? I mean, it might just be a mathematical question, but
it's probably a mathematical question, but my gut reaction is, what's the market going to do? Is number one. Because if you get a couple of years, like if you were to try to put that into play in 2008, well, it might not have worked out too well in your favor, right? Of relying on your or saying, hey, let's let our retirement accounts grow. Well, if we have really down years, multiple years in a row, well, it might not work out super well. The other side of it is that I truly believe that your Social Security should be dependent on how long you think you're going to live. And that's a conversation that's challenging to kind of process and internalize, right? Where it's, hey, I do have major health issues. I don't know how long I'm going to live. Well, maybe taking Social Security earlier is the benefit there, the best route. I think that waiting, though, can be such a big benefit long term. It really depends on what your amounts are, right? Like if you're going to get $600 at age 62 and then $1,000 at age 70, well, that's $400 a month. It's something, but it's not the end all be all. But if you're talking about the difference of like $2,200 at age 62 compared to like $3,600 at age 70, like that's a pretty substantial chunk to try to say, okay, can we build in $1,400 extra dollars per month after age 70 to make this work over the long period of time? And then of course it gets adjusted for inflation as well. So there's factors in there, and that's why I love, sometimes I'll hit the spreadsheets and I hit the financial planning software and I say, what does this look like in this scenario? Let's run the numbers and see. And there's so many assumptions that go into place, right? Like what's the market going to return? How long are we going to live, that are completely out of our control too. And so I think financial planning, one of the things I love the most about it is that it's not something that I think is ever set in stone. It's an evolving process, right? Because we don't know what the market's going to return, heck, tomorrow for that matter. Today was a really down day, and tomorrow may be a really up day with the current volatility that we have. So it's one of those where I plug it in, show people, hey, here's what happens if we do this early. Here's what happens in the projections if we do this later. And then, what will actually happen? Nobody knows. If we had the crystal ball, we'd be able to make a lot better decisions, right?
Yeah, just want to throw my 2 cents in on this one. And once again, you run the numbers on it, and you say, well, what if this, what if that? And I love that perspective. My thought on it is, if the numbers are favorable, right? If you do those numbers and it's like, yeah, it might not make a big difference to pull the money out, Social Security early. That money is getting paid to you as long as you're alive.
Yeah.
And when you die, it's no longer getting paid to you, right? So using that money to live now and then letting your money grow, that's your own money that you can pass on to your descendants, seems like a win to me, right? Yeah. Once again, like if it's a substantial difference and you're like, well, it would actually allow me to live a better life if I kept Social Security till later, do that. But my thought is like, you want to keep as much of your own money in your own pocket as possible. So that way you can pass it on to your kids. Yeah. Or, do something philanthropic with it, whatever.
It's definitely an interesting conversation. Hopefully one that people that are listening to your show are thinking about. A lot of the people that I work with come from states that are pension heavy states, like no Social Security. So Missouri, California, those are 2 areas that I have a lot of clients in. And so we don't have to navigate that quite as much, because most of the time when the people retire from, like, for example, I'm in Missouri. When a teacher retires in Missouri, you can get a really nice pension that can cover most of your life expenses, especially when I see two teacher couples or an administrator and a teacher. They don't need to touch anything else besides the pension that they have. And then everything else is just gravy for the fun stuff, right? The additionals. And so I'm seeing people, though, that are getting those Social Security benefits and now getting them at a higher rate. And it's just adding to like the fun pot, right? Here, now we can do an additional vacation. We can do an additional this. We can buy that car that we've been thinking about, type of thing, where states where you are requiring that as part of your income to live, it throws in a completely different conversation, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's my favorite part about, you know, all these different things is like, if you plan to be good on just your pension, and then these other things come in, if your plan goes wrong, you have these other things to back you up. But if your plan goes right, you just have so much extra goodness that you can do in your life.
That's a good way to describe it. Goodness, I love
it. So I just want to make sure that we all are understanding what this really means. So I want to try and tie this up together for anyone who's still kind of confused, because it's a government bill, so it's confusing, right?
Yeah.
So I'm going to try and, like, I guess, summarize a little bit of what we tried to talk about. I want to see if you catch anything that you think we need to go over. So if you are in a state that you pay into Social Security and a pension, nothing's changed, basically.
Correct.
If you are in a state where you were paying into a pension, but not into Social Security, and you don't meet the requirement to get Social Security, then also nothing's changed.
Exactly. Well, it could change with the government pension offset. But yes, the windfall elimination provision is unchanged if you don't qualify.
Right. So, but if you're getting a pension and like you're just receiving no Social Security from anywhere, it doesn't really matter, because
doesn't matter.
But if you have a spouse that's bringing in Social Security income and they pass away, that is when that starts to make a difference.
Exactly, 100%.
So in those situations, is there any other situation, I guess, that this would make a difference in someone's planning when they're trying to think, okay, this is now my situation that's different? Maybe just if you're in one of these states where you, I mean, I guess if you have like the two teacher income, or if it's a teacher with a non-teacher spouse, in any of these situations, any of those other things come into a factor here?
Here's what I would suggest for anybody listening is, if you have not done already, go to Social Security Administration website. I believe it's ssa.gov, and pull your Social Security statement and see how many years, and it'll tell you exactly how many credits you have towards 40, first of all. And so that way you can kind of make a game plan. Like, do I already have 40 credits? Do I need to pick up some additional credits? And then the second thing that I would do at some point in time is just have your spouse do the exact same thing too, where it's like, hey, are you a teacher? If so, then, you know, check for the exact same thing. If you're a non-teacher and you're going to get Social Security benefits, or, you know, whatever else you're doing that you're going to get the Social Security benefits no matter what, find out what those benefits are going to be for them. If it's something, most people that come to me have no clue what they qualify for or what they may get in future benefits, right? And the thing is like, I don't know, how old are you?
I'm 30.
30. So probably most 30-year-olds are not thinking about looking at their Social Security Administration statement. I'm almost 40, and even most 40-year-olds are not thinking about pulling that statement. But it's a good thing to just grab it and say, hey, here's my years of, it'll show you every year and exactly what you made in that year that qualifies for Social Security and what you paid into Medicare. And so you can kind of go back and say, okay, these months or these quarters basically count, these don't. Here's where I'm at overall. Maybe I've got 30 credits out of the 40 that I need to qualify for this someday. And then you can kind of make a game plan at that point of, you know, and I would do the same thing if you're married, like have your spouse do the exact same thing. Go on there. It's super easy to log in and get you have to jump through some government hoops. They don't want just anybody being able to access your Social Security account. But by doing that, it'll give you the information, right? And sometimes having the information, not sometimes, most of the time, having the information is better than not having the information. So you can then make a game plan of, okay, if I'm at 20 credits or 30 credits out of 40, is this something that would be beneficial for me to go back and pick up the additional credits? Sometimes people will retire and say, heck no, I'm not working again, right? Like, and the amount that you would get from Social Security at 40 credits, it might not be a ton. We might be talking about 500, 600 bucks a month. But Social Security is designed basically to pay out more to lower income earners, right? And so that's where the whole repeal, that's where the Fairness Act started anyways, was that teachers are already getting this pension. Is it fair that they also get kind of prorated into a higher Social Security benefit because of their time not in the classroom? And personally, I say thank goodness that they repealed it, because I don't think that teachers should be hit or reduced because of their obligation to helping serve the public. Like the teaching is hard enough anyways. We don't need to have a reduced benefit out there. But that's where the original thought was, is that teachers are already getting this guaranteed pension. That's most states have that cost of living adjustment attached to it too. They're really good pensions, right? And so they're saying like, hey, why are they getting this pension and getting the bump of having the lower income Social Security status that most teachers get in place? So that's where the whole idea came from. The repeal of it, I'm glad that they did it, because I don't want to see teachers being negatively harmed for doing anything, right? Like we have a hard job. Mine's former, but it's a hard job, right? It's a hard enough already. You shouldn't be having any sort of reduced benefits, in my opinion. Other people may think differently.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. Okay, so I think we've really drilled into this and talked about it. I've tried to put it from different angles, and I think that we've unwrapped what it all means relatively well. And thank you so much for your expertise on this and your thoughts on it. I've really appreciated your ability to explain this in a way that I think people can understand, and how they can take advantage of it if they're in the situation where it was going to negatively affect them, but now it might not.
Sure.
I have two more questions for you that I ask all of my guests. And the first one is, what is your number one tip for teachers to have a richer wallet classroom and life?
That's a good question. I think the biggest thing would be to start. Well, I always go back to, I think the number one thing that anybody can do is budget. Track your numbers, know where you're at, and then start making a game plan going forward. So the second part of it, I'm going to kind of, I guess, make a two-tier approach on this. But one is to track your numbers, find out where your money, what's coming in and where it's going, and come up with a game plan that you can use to stash some of that away, right? Putting money away into a retirement account or investment account now, especially if you're young, oh my gosh, the amount of growth that you can get over your lifetime is just crazy. The second part of that is start understanding what retirement income will look like, even as a 30-year-old or a 25-year-old even who's in education. Sometimes we just go about it blindly, and I can speak from experience. I taught for 8 years, and I did not get involved in personal finance until probably 5 years into teaching, whenever I finally started trying to figure stuff out for myself. And it's been a wild ride since then. So, but we get into the day-to-day, right? It's the, we got this thing from administration, we've got students, we've got parents, we've got student parent-teacher conferences, we've got all the pressures of teaching put on us all the time. And retirement, it seems like such a pipe dream sometimes of oh man, I don't have to worry about that for 20 years, 30 years, 40 years down the road. But having an idea now can help, I think, create options, right? That's what I preach on, is create options in your life. So understand, what does your pension look like? So here in Missouri, it's 2.5 times or 2.5% times your number of years you worked times your average highest 3 consecutive years of income. And so most teachers in Missouri will teach 30 years if they retire in the state of Missouri. I see a lot of people going to year 30 when we hit our rule of 80 for retirement. And at 30 years, you get 75% of your pre-retirement income. And it's like, that's pretty darn good, right? So, but most of the people that I talk to don't know that information. And so study your your state pension, buy your state's book from Carl Fish and say, the TLDR, I know you've had him on before, and say, like, section 2 of his book, or part 2 of his book, is super state specific and will dive into every piece of information that you need about your state's pension. The amount of people in each state that are reading that book is not nearly enough, right? We got to get this into everybody's hands, because teachers need to have this information. Well, not just teachers, really, either the administration, everybody. We just go about it so blindly, and that by the time we actually reach retirement, it's like, oh, I get to have this amount. Is that enough? Do I need more? Do I need less? Well, it depends on your expenses and what you actually spend, going back to the budget, and then what are you going to receive in your retirement? And that's, so I think it's just becoming aware of the things that are happening in your life, and not going into kind of the drift mode where we just get stuck on rinse and repeat and try and I'll worry about that later. That's a very long-winded answer to that question.
I think it's great. I love how you brought the budgeting back to it as well. Like, it's kind of all together, right? You need to know where you're going, and then, or know where you are, know where you're going, and then when you get there, know where you are when you get there, right? So it's kind of all, flows together as part of just having a good financial plan. Well, speaking of having a financial plan, let's say someone needs to contact you and do some financial planning. First of all, what do you do with your financial planning? How can you help teachers? And if they want to get that service, how can they connect with you?
Yeah, that's been a journey, honestly. So I left education in 2020, and just by happen chance that I happened to leave that year, but it had nothing to do with COVID, honestly. But I left teaching in 2020. I've gone down kind of a 5-year path now of trying to figure out what that looks like, of how can I help educators with their money. And it started, I got into the financial coaching space right away. And for me, I was like, I want to do more. How can I do more? And I ended up getting into the financial advising world, and quickly found out that I hated it was not the right fit for me at that particular spot in the financial advising side. And I was like, okay, there's more out there. What can I do? Financial planning. This is where I need to be. So I got a job in financial planning, helping teachers and other educators. And eventually in June of 2024, I launched my own firm. And I help teachers from across the country with all sorts of things. So sometimes we focus on budgeting. Sometimes it's looking at the pension. A lot of people come to me with student loan questions and trying to figure out, what does retirement look like in my scenario? I don't know anything about my pension, right? How much am I going to make in retirement? And what do I need to save each month to help get me to that point? And so there's probably a couple things, but number one is if people want to find me, I'm at www.k-12planning.com. That's my website. And then I've actually created 2 resources as well that I don't know if you'd be willing, but we can put them in the show notes. But the first one is the complete guide to the teacher student loan forgiveness, including public service loan forgiveness. And it's an 18-page guide that kind of walks teachers through every step of the process, including the most recent PSLF buyback information and how to apply for that, and what that looks like right now. It talks about consolidations. It talks about income-driven repayment plans, kind of the works as if you were starting and you didn't know what to do, this guide would help get you to that point. And then the second thing that I've created is how much do I need to save, right? So it's a pretty basic template, but it will kind of get you going in the right direction. So, we start with how much do you spend right now, or an estimate of what you spend right now. Then how much do you think we're going to have inflation over the next blank years? How many years until you retire? And what is inflation going to look like during that time frame? How much do you currently have in your investments? And again, kind of the unknown is, what do you think you're going to return in those investments over that given period of time? And I've given some numbers in there that can help guide you. And then the last question that it asks is, what are you actually going to receive in income? So Social Security, pension, plug those numbers in there, and then my formula kind of takes over, and it'll say, hey, you need to save blank amount per month. And at least it will give somebody a guide of, here's where I am today, here's where I want to be, maybe 10, 20, 30 years in the future. This will give me a number that will say, hey, I need to try to hit blank amount per month to make sure that I'm reaching my goal to not decrease my lifestyle with the income that I'm going to pull from various sources. And it's not a perfect spreadsheet, right? There's so many variables that go in there, but at least it'll be potentially something that can start the conversation.
Right. Instead of just saying, hey, I guess I need $100 a month or $500 or whatever, you're throwing a number out there. You have at least a place to begin.
Yeah, exactly.
And, I'm happy to provide these resources. If you would like to, find these resources and get them, quickly, you can go to teachermoneyshow.com/podcast. You can find the show notes for all the shows there, or in your podcast player in the description, you'll find the direct link to the show notes page for this show, and you'll be able to find the complete student loan forgiveness guide or the how much do I need to save spreadsheet that you can use, as well as a link to David's website, k-12planning.com, so you can contact him if you have any financial planning questions.
Yeah, perfect. Awesome.
Well, David, this is a fantastic conversation. Thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Yeah, I appreciate it. This has been great.
Wow. Thank you, David, so much for coming on the show. That was a fantastic conversation. Now it's time for the Clip Notes. This episode is brought to you by me. I'm coming into schools and talking to teachers like you about your personal finances and how you can take control of your money. If you know that the teachers around you need that information, which, let's be honest, they need that information, talk to your administration about bringing me in to come speak to your school about this very important topic. Now on to the Clip Notes. Number 1, if you are in a state where you have only the pension, this really applies to you. Your planning and the amount of money you're going to get in retirement has gotten so much better because you know exactly how much you're going to get. You don't have to worry about offsets and eliminations, and you're going to be able to get that extra benefit if you have reached that credit limit for Social Security. So make sure that you have that dialed in and you're not discounting your Social Security if you are in a pension-only state. If you are in a pension and Social Security state, this hasn't really changed a lot for you, but it's still good to know. Number 2, speaking of that, if you don't have 40 credits yet, get more. If you do, and you are enjoying working in the summers or you have a side hustle or whatever, keep that up because that'll keep building those credits over time. And the more credits you have, the more money you'll be able to get from Social Security to go along with your pension. Number 3, run the numbers to determine when to pull your Social Security. This is kind of a rabbit trail, and I really liked this one where we were just talking about how this will interplay between the pension and Social Security, when you should pull it, when you shouldn't. Should you wait until you're 70? Should you do it at 62? And you have to run the numbers and figure that out, especially when you have a pension, then you have your own money you have invested, and all these other things that are going into your decision-making around this. So really run the numbers and determine what the best choice for you is about when you pull that Social Security check. Number 4, if you don't know how many credits you have, go to ssa.gov and pull that statement. Now I'm going to do all the research for you to find out where this is. So you can go to teachermoneyshow.com/podcast to find the show notes for this show or any of the shows. Or you can go to the description of your podcast player and get the direct link to the show notes there. And you'll be able to find the link to ssa.gov, specifically to the page where you can look for your credits and just find out where you're at. Are you on your way towards getting that 40 credits? Are you close enough that you might want to intentionally start building that up so that way you get there? That is a valuable lesson. And number 5, budget. Make a plan. Look forward towards retirement early. So that way you know what you need. So that way you know how much you need to start saving and so forth. All of these things are massively important as you are preparing yourself for the future. If you don't know how much you spend now, you won't know how much you need to spend then. Getting that dialed in with a budget is so important. Okay, so that was the Cliff Notes. Pretty straightforward. Hopefully this episode wasn't too confusing as we tried to unpack government regulations and things like that. But basically, there were these regulations in place, and now there isn't, which means that teachers are going to be able to receive so much more, such a much bigger benefit in retirement. And it's just going to help you live a richer life. But remember, as a teacher, you are already rich. Your wallet just needs to catch up. If you would like help on your personal financial situation, go to teachermoneyshow.com/coaching and you'll be able to find different ways that I can help you there. If you would like to participate in spreading this message, of financial empowerment to teachers. I would encourage you to talk to your administrator or to your district level about going to seankmorgan.com to find more information there. And regardless of which one of those you need, please like and subscribe so that way we can spread the reach of this more. Leave a 5-star rating and review. That's going to help more teachers find this, and then turn around and tell a teacher friend. I really appreciate it.